You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to Friday's Writing Community Chat Show. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show here on a Friday evening. Please, if you're watching now, take the opportunity to share this around to people that you think may also want to watch it. And if you're watching belatedly and not live, then thank you very much. And please consider doing the same. Tonight, we've got a brilliant author. Really looking forward to speaking to him. Been wanting to speak to him on the show for a while. So it's an absolute pleasure to have him here. Now, I know Agate will be really cross at me if I don't mention the fact that we have just crossed the 10,000 mark on Twitter. So we've got 10,000 people following us now, which, to be honest, I don't really know what that means other than the fact that we've got 10,000 people. We probably won't interact with all of them. You probably only get a smidge of them that you actually speak to on a regular basis, but we appreciate it nonetheless. When we cross that barrier, you know, Agate's been really excited for it for a while. And I just kind of pictured what would it be like if you had 10,000 people looking at you at the same time, like through your window or something. It'd be very creepy and an eerie thing. I'm probably messing this up. Agate's probably got a great speech prepared and ready to go, but he's not here. So tonight, obviously, he's gone off camping. Me and Douglas were laughing before the show. He's probably just in his backyard because I don't think he's brave enough to go camping out there in the wild. But nonetheless, he's not here. So it is myself and Douglas tonight. And I don't like talking to myself. So I'm going to say hello to a few people and then I'm going to get Douglas out to chat to us. So hello to the usual suspects. Brandon, I saw that you were there early doors and I definitely appreciate it. So hello and welcome to you. Malengo. Yeah, hello to you. I'm not going to really mention you because we had a bit of an argument after the show last week. A very nice argument. But then again, you have said my name. And I don't know if that's in an aggressive manner or that you're happy to see me. So, you know, if you're part of the VIP, Writing Community Chat Show VIP group, we do an after show and you can come and speak to us and chat to us. And apparently, according to Malengo, you can verbally abuse us if that's what you're into. So yeah, hello to you. And Anya, loyal fan member of the show, hello to you and thank you very much for tuning in. And Linda, not forgetting you, obviously you're there as well. So yeah, tonight's guest, as I've said before, he's a brilliant author. I definitely recommend that you check his novels out because if you're into private detective fiction, mixed with a little bit of fantasy, you will definitely love his books. And if you've got that harsh tongue and that you're into that gritty story that's unlike anything you will ever read, then even more so go and check out Douglas's books. And he's going to join us tonight, obviously, and chat to us about how he got into writing, what his current book is about, or his latest one, as you can see there in the top corner, beautiful covers as well. And yeah, we're going to give you the opportunity to ask questions as well. So stick around until the end of the show and feel free to ask Douglas as many questions as you want. He said he's not afraid of anything. So, you know, send those questions in for him. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have a good time. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to get Douglas Lumsden out to chat to us.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Douglas. How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Absolute pleasure to have you here on the show.
Good to be here.
Yeah, so tell us where you're coming from, Douglas.
Well, I live in Monterey, California. We've got nice overcast weather, just the way we like it. Little light wind, beautiful summer day. Our warm temperatures here don't start until September. So we're doing great.
Yeah, sounds like perfect writing conditions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, writing conditions and running conditions. Yep.
Yeah. So you're an avid runner, aren't you, Douglas? I've seen that obviously from researching a little bit before the show.
Yeah, I started running when I was in my 50s. Then I met my wife, Rita, and she was a really good runner, lots of marathons. So she taught me the right clothes to wear and the right shoes and how to train up to race. And we've been running ever since. 71 and still going strong.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm 33 and I don't think I could run around a table. I don't run a marathon.
Never too late to start.
Yeah, definitely. So Douglas, we normally do a little intro to each section of the show, so I'm going to do that if that's all right.
Okay.
We're a little bit clinky because Agate normally does this bit, but here it is. It's the road to writing. So Douglas, the road to writing. So obviously you've talked a little bit about the road in terms of running, and we can definitely get into that again later. But how did writing become a thing in your life?
Well, from really early on, I mean, back when I was just a school kid, I always enjoyed writing. I thought someday I would write a novel. And then things just kept coming up, and there's lots of things to do. And occasionally, a couple of times, I actually started on something, but quickly abandoned it. And did this and that, got into teaching. And once I started teaching, I just didn't have the time. And I've got to say right now, I really have to just give a shout out to every single writer who has a full-time job and somehow manages to get their writing in anyway, because that's something I was never able to do. And when I was teaching people who don't teach, I used to be a school teacher, taught history. People who don't teach have no idea how many hours a teacher puts in order to get that classroom lesson plan finished. So you tend to think that the teacher is working when they're in the classroom, and and other than that, especially during the summer breaks, they have nothing but free time, and that is just not true. We work very, very hard in order to get that lesson plan in there. So when I was teaching, I just had no time whatsoever to write, even though I always thought one of these days I'm going to do it. And then at one point during a summer break, I took a stab at it. I wrote something really terrible. It was about 25 years ago. I wrote something that was really terrible, really awful. I've deleted all evidence of it from my computers, from anything that was ever written down on paper. It's totally gone. I've remembered some parts of it, and I've used some parts of that thing, but it's gone. And it was an interesting experience. And then I kept on teaching, and I finally retired in 2018. Retired from teaching, and I had always loved to read, and so I used to be able to read during summer breaks, but I couldn't read while school was on because I just didn't have the time. And so when I retired, I thought, okay, I'm just going to binge read for the rest of my life. And I started reading book after book after book. For 2 years, I did almost nothing but read. I didn't travel anywhere. I hardly got out of the house except for to run and to ride a bike. But other than that, I just spent all my time reading. And then after about 2 years, I was reading a book and I was thinking, I probably could have written this. I probably could have written it better. And then I thought, it's time to put up or shut up. You've been talking for decades about how you could write a novel someday if you ever wanted to. It's about time that you opened up the computer, looked at the blank screen, and got something down. Put your money where your mouth is. And So I was a big fan. My favorite book ever is Catch-22 by Joseph Heller.
Right.
And Joseph Heller, I just really admire his writing so much. And I read interviews with him, and he said in an interview, and it stuck with me, that he could not begin to write a book until he had the first line and the last line.
Yeah.
I figured, well, if I write a book, maybe I'll be half as good as Joseph Heller. So I decided I'll go with just the first line. I figured I'll go with half his tools, maybe I can be half as good. So I sat down in front of a blank screen, and I had no idea what I was going to write. I didn't even know what genre I was going to write. I like fantasy and science fiction. I like crime novels. I had a thought at one point that I would write a nostalgia kind of novel. I mean, I'm old enough to be able to do nostalgia pretty well. That's something in the 60s and 70s might go over. And so I sat down and I thought, I'm going to write 10 first lines. Write 10 opening lines and see which one I like and see if I can go somewhere with it. And so on the first one, I wrote this really long sentence about a troll standing in the doorway of a bar. And then I followed that with a really short sentence. My first sentence was 104 words long, and the second sentence was 9 words long. As a rhythm,
Yeah.
And so I wrote that. That was going to be my first opening line. And then after I wrote the second line, I wrote a third line, and then I wrote another paragraph. And then I wrote a few paragraphs after that. Next thing you knew, I had a chapter, and then I just kept going. And that became A Troll Walks into a Bar.
Yeah.
And I never did get to writing those other 9 opening lines. So that's how it got started. I was 67 years old at that time. And I thought my goal here is I'm going to write a novel from beginning to end. And it's going to have a middle. It's going to make sense. And I figure my dad had promised, my dad's in his 90s. He had promised he would read it. And I have 2 sisters, and they said they would read it because they had been waiting for me to write a novel for a long time. And so I figured, and my wife was going to read it. And I figured I had 4 readers.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I could get 1 or 2 more people to read it. And I figured I'd have, maybe 10 people read this book. And I learned how to self-publish. I read an online guide by Jane Friedman, who taught me anyway how to self-publish. I went to Kindle Direct Publishing, got it all down there in less than 3 months. Took me less than 3 months. Got it all down there. Made my own cover, not the one that you see now.
Yeah.
And put it on there in Kindle Direct Publishing. And I thought, okay, that's it. I did it. I'm done. Okay, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
And that's how I got started. And then my wife Rita said she was a big Instagram fan. I wasn't on any of that. And she said, you ought to open an Instagram account and let people know that you've published a book. And I thought, well, why do I want to do that? But I thought, well, that sounds like fun, so I opened up an Instagram account, and another writer by the name of Asaf Meir was on Instagram, and he had written a book in a series called Magic, Daggers, and Togas, I think, something like that. And it was a urban fantasy set in a mythical version of ancient Rome. And I read it. I thought, because it's right up my alley. I taught ancient history and medieval history, and I read it and thought it was brilliant. And so I sent him a message saying, I really enjoyed your book, and I wrote a book too. And he read my book and he liked it and promoted it on Facebook and said, you've built a good world here. I'd like to know more about that. You ought to write a sequel.
Yeah.
Sequel? What? I mean, nobody's reading the first book. Why would I write a sequel? And no, go ahead and do it. So I wrote Witch Steps into My Office, and it came out pretty easily. And I really enjoyed what I wrote in that book. And next thing I knew, people were reading my books, and people were saying, you ought to write more. So I did. And it just kept going like that. And that's where we are now.
Oh, I love that. So can you remember that book that you were reading that you talked about that you thought, I could probably give this a
I
crack.
cannot. First of all, I can't remember. I honestly cannot remember what the book was that I was reading at that time. And second of all, if I did remember, I wouldn't tell you because
yeah. No, I get that. So
I'm not going to tell an author I could have written your book better.
yeah. So with Joseph Howler, then, in terms of Catch-22 being such an inspiration, did you? Because I think when a lot of writers start out, they go, "This is my inspiration. I really enjoyed this. Can I do something like this? Can I?" Obviously, I've enjoyed it, so. I think a lot of authors, when they first start out, maybe fall into the trap of trying to replicate similar styles to authors that they've enjoyed. What advice would you give to somebody who may fall into that trap? And did you do that yourself?
Yeah, I don't think I did. First of all, I wouldn't have presumed that I could have written in Joseph Hiller's style. But one of the things I like about Hiller is that he has this way of setting up a punchline. So he'll write a paragraph, and then the last line of the paragraph will just, it's like the punchline of a joke. It just, and I kind of try to do that sometimes, but I would hate to think that I'm actually trying to follow in his footsteps because those are pretty big shoes to fill. Now, I will say, though, that I'm a big fan, always have been a big fan of Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe books and Dashiell Hammett's, his books. And I have very consciously tried to, I wouldn't say copy their style, but very consciously be inspired by their style. Yeah. And again, somebody like Raymond Chandler, I'm not going to write Raymond Chandler's works. Because he is just, the stuff he writes is just too good. Yeah. But I will, but since my books are written with a noir style, I try to, what I do is I have Raymond Chandler quotes in my head to try to set the vibe for what I'm trying to write. And I think if you're inspired by somebody, that's probably about the best you can do. So my advice is, if you really like an author, read their works, kind of have their books in your mind to set the vibe. I use the word vibe. I don't know what a better word is, but the kind of a feeling you want in your book. And once you have that feeling, then you have to just have to respond to it as yourself. Raymond Chandler could write a line like, "I needed a drink. I needed a lot of life insurance. I needed a vacation. I needed a home in the country. What I had was a coat, a hat, and a gun. I put them on and walked out of the room." Yeah. I can't write that line, but I can be inspired by it. So
yeah, no, definitely.
My advice is just let it set your mindset and then just respond as yourself.
So Douglas, take us back to that moment where you decided to write your first book. Now, obviously, you've got your 10 readers waiting patiently. They've been waiting a long time to pick this book up. How did you decide that A Troll Walks into a Bar was the book that you were going to write and dedicate the next few months of your life to? Because obviously, you've talked about you've always wanted to write and you had that ambition. So I'm guessing over time that you had multiple ideas pop into your head. And, one of the things, or one of the great difficulties about being a writer is filtering those ideas into what's novel worthy and what's just an idea that doesn't really have the legs. So how did you come up to the conclusion that was what you were going to go with?
Yeah, that's really interesting because over the decades, I had all kinds of ideas pop in my head, and I would even occasionally list them in case I ever got to them, right? So here's the idea about this, the idea about that. And they were, like I say, a variety of genres. I was kind of stuck on that 70s nostalgia one for quite a while, although I never actually started it. And then, of course, detective novels and noir novels and fantasy novels. I had various ideas along those lines. But like I say, when I sat down to write opening lines, I had no idea that I was going to write about a troll walking into a bar. That's not one of the ideas that had ever occurred to me until I sat down and stared at my blank screen. And so I thought, I just started writing it. I'm a total pantser when I writing by the seat of my pants, and I don't know where it's going to go. And so when I wrote about this troll standing in the doorway of a bar, it was the first time it had ever entered my mind. And even as I was writing it as one first. I was going to write 10. Remember, I was going to write 10 first lines, and this was the first one that I wrote, and I had no idea it was the only one I was going to write. So where did it come from? I have no idea. It just entered my mind at that moment, and then I ran with it.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. So time is moving on a little bit. We're in 20-minute mark. So I'm thinking maybe
I do tend to ramble.
No, ramble away. I'm really enjoying the whole narrative and everything. I suppose I'll ask a couple more questions before we go into the second part. But you talked obviously about the dedication that teachers have. Did you ever at any point find it really frustrating that you had this dream to write a novel, but you didn't have the time to do it?
Yeah, no, not really. I always figured I would have time at some point. And that leads me to something else that's kind of interesting. I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up, but I'm going to do it anyway, all right? Because I'm taking your show.
Yeah, go for it.
There was, and it's related, okay? I was on Twitter, and I'd gotten on Twitter after I got fed up with Facebook, and I wanted some other way to communicate that I'd written a book. So I went on Twitter, and I had about 48 followers, if I remember right. And I was following along on a conversation between two people, and I don't remember who they were. And one of them said something along the lines of, I was just devastated when I hadn't published my first book by the time I was 30. And I'm reading this, and I'm 67 years old at the time. And I'm thinking, you guys are barely out of the crib. I mean, you got plenty of time. And so I wrote a tweet. I was about to go do a workout on the treadmill. And just as I was getting up, I thought, I'm going to respond, not so much respond directly, but I'm just going to write this tweet. And so I wrote, for what it's worth, I was 43 when I got my PhD. I was 51 when I got my dream job. I was 54 when I married the love of my life. I was 55 when I ran my first marathon. I was 67 when I self-published my first book. And I was 69 at the time. I wrote, I'll turn 70 next year, and I can't wait. And I put it up on Twitter. And then I went and I did my treadmill workout. And I came back and see what was going on Twitter. And that tweet had just blown up. It just blown up. It's been on I don't know how many millions of screens now. It's got more than 250,000 likes, I think, at this point. And it gets retweeted. It's been worldwide. And then it got on Instagram. It blew up on Instagram. Somebody screenshot it. The Oprah people got a hold of it. They retweeted it and everything. So I guess the point of all of that is that never in my life did I ever think I've got to do it now or it's going to be too late. And so when I was teaching and didn't have time to write, I kept thinking, maybe when I retire already, because my only goal was really just to get one done, to finish it, just to prove to myself I could do it. So I thought, I've got time. I'll do it one of these days. So in answer to your question, no, I never really did get frustrated by that. Never did.
Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful way of looking at life in general, to be honest. I think that's probably part of the reason why it's, so many people have engaged in such a positive way with it, because, it's that constant message of, whatever you want to achieve in life, you can do it at any point if you've got the right mindset,
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And you have to moderate your expectations,
Yeah.
In my 70s, I have no intention of going through the process of trying to find an agent and then find a traditional publisher. And I mean, you know, I love self-publishing. I love being in charge of my own activity.
Yeah.
And other people, you know, they have different ideas about this sort of thing, and that's fine.
Mm.
But at my age, I'm not sure I want to do the wait for 8 years for a traditional publisher to discover my work and then decide to publish it. I may not have that much time.
Well, by the sounds of it, Douglas, you're going to live forever. I feel like you're
I'm
a
working
Stephen
on it.
King character with a mouse in your pocket or something. You've got this special ability. I know you don't like Stephen King that much because I saw a tweet before we came on the show about him. But yeah, maybe Mr. Jangles is there somewhere. Maybe he's under your hat. So yeah, one of my questions.
Not much under here.
Was going to be, obviously you mentioned how significant running is in your life.
Yes.
Now, a lot of creative people say that running is such a cathartic process and such a positive process for creativity. Do you find that the two? Yeah, I was going to say, do you find that the two come hand in hand? And what's that like for you as a writer?
Well, first of all, I get all my best ideas usually just after I have finished a run. Sometimes during the run. Usually it comes when I'm walking back home from the end of the run. That's usually when I get my best ideas. Or if I'm out walking, I take lots of walks too. There's something about being outside and being moving. That seems to stimulate my thought process more than anything else.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I'm stuck, if I'm writing and I find myself, I've written myself into a corner, and I'm stuck, I'll just shout out at Rita, you know, I'm going to take a walk. You know, I gotta work this scene through. And I'll go out and walk in 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And, yeah, I'm back. I'm ready to go. But there is something about being outside, moving around. Really does stimulate the neurons. Yeah, so I really recommend it. If you don't want to run, walk. If you don't want to walk, just go and sit outside under the clouds if you're in Monterey, or out in the sun if you're in most places. Just breathe the air. Yeah, I think that works. I think that really works.
So take us through a typical writing day of your life. Like, what's your routine like?
Okay, well, I tend to wake up in the morning around 6 or so. Rita and I'll make Rita coffee. I don't drink coffee myself, which is odd because my character drinks a lot of it, but I get his love of coffee from Rita. And then we'll sit in bed and she'll read the newspaper off her iPad. Then I'll make her a second cup of coffee. And then we'll get up and I'll have breakfast and we'll go out and do a run. That takes up most of the morning. Come back, I after the run, I always have a smoothie. It's banana and blueberry and lots of other things.
Nice.
Big giant smoothie. And then she'll go in to the back bedroom and she'll practice her piano and she'll do her Duolingo. She's really good with languages. I'm not. And while she's back there, then I will write for the afternoon. So I usually start my writing somewhere noonish, 1-ish, write till 4 or 5 or so, and then knock off for the day. And then, very important, after we've had dinner, Rita will come in and she will read what I have written that day out loud.
Yeah.
And I'll stand over her shoulder while she's reading the computer screen.
The nerve stand behind the shoulder. Is it?
Yeah,
is it any good?
Right. Yeah. And the two of us will then comment on what I've written and make edits. And I consider her to be my co-editor. And I don't pay her, but we have a joint checking account. So I guess it all works out to be about the same. And then so we sort of edit what I wrote that day together as she reads it out loud. And then we pretty much watch television for the rest of the night. So that's how it works for me.
Yeah. Do you reckon that, I mean, this is a bit of a personal question, I suppose, but Do you think without Rita in your life, obviously you say you got married at a later age. I think you said 54.
54. I think, I think it was actually 55, but I wrote 54 in the tweet, so I'm sticking with that.
Yeah, stick with it. Go with it. Yeah, definitely. But do you think without Rita, do you ever think you would have had, because obviously she was a part of the process of the first few readers who said, I'm waiting for this book, come and do it. I'm waiting to read it. And obviously you've just talked about how influential she is on a daily basis. Do you think you'd have been able to do it without her? And I suppose what my question is what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to navigate their relationship with their writing and their hobbies as well?
Yeah. To answer the first part of the question, probably not. Rita has been such a big part of my process for writing. She gives me so much encouragement. She's my co-editor. She goes out of her way to support me in what I'm doing. She's terribly interested in all my writing, everything I do. Maybe I could have written a book without her, but it wouldn't have been anywhere nearly as much fun or as good. I really should call her in at this point. Yeah, all my books are dedicated to her. So she has been a tremendous part of the process. The second part of the question, I cannot speak to anyone else's relationships. I've had, when I wrote that tweet, I had a lot of people asking me for life advice questions, and I am not qualified to give it. Okay? I can only tell you what I did. I can't recommend, except for, go outside to get inspired. Other than that, when it comes to relationship questions, I am absolutely the wrong person to ask. Rita is my third marriage. That means I had 2 failed ones. Okay, so I'm probably not the person to come to. I think I just lucked into it.
Yeah, no, I love that.
So my advice is luck into a good one.
Look into it. Yeah. Keep trying until you get the right one.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah, no, I love that. So we will move on to the next part of the show where we talk about your latest release and any other works that you want to talk about as well. So I'll just play the little video for that because we do have a video.
Okay.
And it is this one. So Douglas, as the video suggests, what's the story? So this is your opportunity, and we always ask everyone that comes on to give us their elevator pitch, or the blurb if you want to, either or. So can you tell us what your latest book is all about?
I'm so bad with these blurbs. Let me answer it by saying that all of my books are a series. So the series features a hard-boiled private dick, Alexander Sutherland, PI, and he is in a noirish, sort of 40-ish, 50-ish kind of world, but with modern technology. And the world's an alternative world ruled by dragon lords, and he encounters a lot of fantasy critters. And starting with the second book, the fantasy critters tend to be creatures out of Mesoamerican folklore. And so we've got the hard-boiled detective navigating his way through trolls and witches and other critters, femme fatales from the depths of the sea, as he encounters corruption and violence and murder and mayhem and mystery. So how's that? Is that a good elevator pitch?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely.
I don't go to agents, so I don't do elevator pitches all that well. So
yeah, no, it's definitely a good pitch for the series. And yeah, I suppose a question there in why, once you've obviously, I think you can kind of navigate from your history in terms of, you've got massive fan of Raymond Chandler and his books and his work, and the private investigator sort of stories and I was going to say the private dick, but for some reason it just didn't feel right when I was trying to say it. But yeah, you've got that influence. And obviously you talked about teaching for so long and teaching ancient history and things like that. And you're looking at mythology. So you can kind of see how the two blend. But I suppose my question is, how did you, once you decided to write A Troll Walks Into a Bar, how did you then navigate the larger world that you created? Because obviously there was an appetite there for people to read more within the series, but it's like, where do I take this? I've got this world that I've created that people are enjoying reading, that they want more of. What do I do now?
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I wrote Troll Walks Into a Bar, I wanted there to be a kind of larger background story. I wanted his world to make sense. So I got to the point where, okay, we have a private investigator in a bar. A troll has come in to tell him that a beautiful nymph from the depths of the sea is going to come to his office the next day, ask him to investigate a case for her, and he's going to have to turn it down, or else, the troll is a police officer, as it turns out. Okay, a corrupt police officer. So the troll says she's going to come to you with a case. You're going to turn it down, if you know it's good for you. And so I got that far, and then I thought, okay, how could this have happened? And I thought, okay, well, we got a world. It's a noir world, but it's got fantasy creatures in it. And I thought, what would have happened if, when the Dark Lord arrived, when Sauron arrived, or whoever arrived, what if he had won? What if he hadn't been overthrown? So I thought, okay, we got a Dragon Lord then, and that Dragon Lord's immortal. He's 100-foot long, fire-breathing, magic-wielding killing machine, and he still exists. He's still been ruling for 6,000 years. Okay, and I thought, okay, what would that world be like? Okay, well, he's in charge. Humans still dominate the planet, so humans are going to do what humans do. Eventually, they're going to industrialize, and the Dragon Lord is okay with this. And this was all just kind of coming to me as we went. And then I got to a point where Sutherland was trying to decide. He had turned down the case initially, but he felt guilty about it, and so he's going out into this. He's going out into this wharf to look out at the ocean in my fantasy version of San Francisco, and he's thinking he's feeling bad about himself. I thought, well, I think Rita came in at that point, and she said, "There's too much introspection here. Something's got to happen." I thought, okay, he's going to meet somebody. Who's he going to meet? Okay, well, he meets an elf. Okay, elves were opposed the rise of the Dragon Lords. They were the Great Rebellion, and they're supposed to be extinct. But this one elf has met Sutherland at the end of a war. Oh, okay. Well, now we got the world starting to build. Thought, okay, we got all the background we need here, and the elf gives Sutherland some gifts that help him solve the case and help him in his life. Okay, we got a world here now, and it kind of makes sense. Well, when a sophomore read this, said, "I'm really fascinated by this world you've built. You've got to do more with it." Oh, really? I do? Okay. All right. Well, where do we go from here? And so with the second book, I built it a little further, and with the third book, I built it a little further. And to be perfectly honest, I've written 6 books now, and it's still building, and I'm still not quite sure where it's all going to go. So, but it just kind of grew. I let it.
I think it's something that if you can get a character, which you obviously have done, that so many people have invested in, that really enjoy reading, like, I suppose it's a skill in itself to be able to carry that character on. Like, as a writer, it's probably the one thing we all wish for, that we've fashioned and created a character that we have that scope to be able to do that with. Because, I'm thinking, again, in the crime fiction genre, the likes of Michael Connelly, who and Lee Child with Jack Reacher and things like that they've been able to just write story after story after story about the same characters, but all unique, all really interesting. And it sounds like you've definitely hit the jackpot in terms of, I've got a brilliant character and I've got a fantastic world to explore that has so many layers to it that I don't even know where I want to go next, because there's so many places. So I suppose my question that's hidden in that is, how do you then decide, oh, I'm going to do this next?
Yeah, that is interesting, because I have been trying to end this series since book 5. I when I got to book 5, I said, this is going to be book 5 was a night owl slips into a diner. And I thought, this is going to be the last one. Okay. I want to do something else. And then I wrote, as I was writing A Night Owl Slips into a Diner, it was quickly apparent that I wasn't going to be able to wrap things up. And then I thought, okay, the next book will do it for sure. The next book was A Nymph Returns to the Sea. And my honest intention was book 6 was going to be it. 6 books is enough. I've got this thing, I see it on TV series all the time, where they stretch themselves out, they burn themselves out, and then it's just like it just exists just to exist. And I've seen so many TV series just that I loved just fail after about 4 seasons or so. And I thought, that's not going to happen with me. But what happens, I guess, is that I just remain curious about Sutherland. He was an interesting character to me. And I just remained curious about him, and I just wanted to know, okay, what's he going to do next? What's he going to do next? Well, what if we put him in this situation? How's he going to respond? And as I say, my books just kind of grow as I write them. I really don't have any plan at all when I start. Maybe just the germ of an idea, and that's about it. So Nymph Returns to the Sea didn't end the series, and I thought, okay, book 6. That was book 5. Book 6 will definitely end the series, and that is The Blood and Moon Feeds on My Dreams. That wasn't my original title, because I was going to write a whole different book. I had a whole different intro and everything. Right. And then I thought, while the deal was he was going to investigate the death of a character that we've encountered a couple of times. And then I thought, well, he's doing that for free. He's got to do something for money in order to make a living. So I brought up this other case that he would do just for the money.
Yeah.
Okay? And that took off, and it became the whole story. And I realized I'm not going to be able to finish my series with this story either, because I still have to get back to him investigating that murder. And I had to go back and cut out that whole subplot that I was originally going to be the plot of the book. I had to go back and cut it out entirely because it no longer fit. And so that's going to have to be the beginning of my 7th book. Nice. And I swear the 7th book is going to be it. Except that, of course, I've done this 2 or 3 times before, so I can't guarantee it. But I guess it's just that the character is still interesting to me, and the world is there's still more to be told in that world. So I guess I'm just going to have to continue it for at least one more book. And I did write a novella which featured one of my side characters, the were-rat, right? And I called it The Demon's Dagger. And I wanted to write something shorter just for the challenge of it. It was originally going to be a short story, and it grew and became a novella. But it's set in the same world as Alexander Sutherland. So I'm still in that world, even though that book doesn't feature Sutherland. And I think that when I finish Sutherland with book 7, because I think I have this feeling that it's got a shelf life, and it just can't last much longer than that. But my next book might be set in the same world, maybe 1,000 years in the future, and I'll just write it as pure fantasy.
Right.
At least that's one of the ideas I have right now.
Why do you think that's the case, Douglas? Why do you think that it's got a shelf life? And have you not been tempted? Because obviously, people are obviously enjoying the books. You know, you'll be 7 books in next time around. Have you not thought, do you know what? I'm going to write something completely different. I'm going to release that. And then I'm going to come back to Southerland, and I'm going to.
That's a possibility. That's a possibility, depending on how people respond. I'll be honest. I think that my writing has improved with each book. At least I hope that's the case. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah.
And I have this fear that people will read Troll and think, well, yeah, it's not bad, but it's really not my thing. And then they'll never get to, I'll be writing book 15 of Southerland, and people who read the first book and thought, well, this is probably about as good as it's going to get, so there's no point in going any further. It's just, it's something that's in my head.
Do you know what? I think that's a strange. I get what you're saying completely. I completely understand why you might think that. However, again, when I talk about people like Michael Connelly, I remember one of the first books that really hooked me was The Lincoln Lawyer. Now, obviously, that was nowhere near Michael Connelly's first book.
Right.
He was very experienced at that point. I can't remember exactly how many books he'd released. But then I went back and I read the very first Harry Bosch book. And even though it wasn't as good as The Lincoln Lawyer, in my personal opinion, I still enjoyed it because he was an author that I'd already invested in. I'd already liked his work. And then what I saw with Harry Bosch, the series, was exactly what you're saying. Each book got better and better, and I could see the progression in his writing. And because of that, I was invested, and I was there. I was there with him. I was there with Harry Bosch, and
yeah, I love the Harry Bosch books.
Yeah, and I feel like that is something that people kind of expect. They expect to see progression in a writer's work. They expect, maybe the first book in the series to be, and I mean this in the best possible way, the weakest of the series, because obviously you're still getting some ideas out there. It's a starting point,
right.
And that's kind of the way I'd look at it. I think in terms of if somebody comes to book 7 and they read it and they think, wow, this is amazing, and then they go back and they read 1 to 7.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
I always encourage people to read my second book, of which Steps into My Office. I always encourage people to read that one first and then treat A Troll Walks into a Bar as a prequel. I think that actually works pretty well. But here's my idea on Troll, which is as my first work. It's like when you really like a rock and roll group and you like their stuff, and you go back and you listen to their first album and you say, it's not as polished, but it's raw and it has that passion, enthusiasm. So that's what I tell people about my first book. Yeah, it's it's not as polished, but it has all that raw enthusiasm in it. That's the one you really
But I mean, when you go back to reading Troll, I think about it, and I remember when I was reading it, I was thinking, I have never read anything like this ever.
Oh.
And maybe that says something about my my reading scope. But I do consider myself sort of well read, and I get obviously the plot and the private eye stuff that has been done before, but the merging of the two,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unique in terms of
it has been done. Yeah, it has been done. I'm blanking on the thing. Glenn Cook has done it, and Jonathan Lethem has done it, and there are others. It has been done, but when I wrote it, I wasn't terribly interested in putting out something that was completely unique, because who can do that? I mean, everything has been done.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it hadn't been done by me,
Yeah, exactly.
That was the thing.
It was that raw grittiness that you're talking about, that especially now in today's world of publishing and things like that, it was a shock to the system. And I talked to you briefly before about how I sort of discovered your work, and it was through an author that we've had on the show, Stephen J. Gold. He was promoting your work, and he'd I think you'd done an article with him in Punk magazine, and his writing was the same sort of shock to my system in terms of wow,
his work
can exist. Yeah, but it was just I had the same reaction reading A Troll Walks into a Bar as I did when I met Steve's work, because
now you are feeding my ego. And my ego is pretty big as it is. Yeah,
that's the thing when
his work is brilliant.
Yeah, it is. But when you meet something that's so refreshingly different to what what is shoved down your throat on a regular basis. You know, if you go to the supermarket or the bookstore, they've got their bestsellers book, best-selling books and things like that. And as somebody who studied like literature and fiction and the writing craft, like as soon as I pick up a book, I go, I can see the same structure here, and I can see the same sort of narrative voice, and this sounds very much like this book, and this sounds very much like this one. So when you come across your work or Steve's and people like that, it's like, wow, this is very different. And
I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, but you know, that's I think the more people can find people like yourself and find a different diet, the more people will appreciate fiction in general, in terms of going, there's so many great voices out there.
And with so much indie press and self-published work out now, this really is the golden age for readers.
Yeah, definitely.
There is so much great stuff out there right now, that like never before. And I've got a to be read list that is just way out of control. And I, to the point where I've just stopped adding books to it, because I'm not going to get to the ones I've got. So this is if you like reading, this is the time to do it. Yeah,
100%. And so I've just clocked an eye on the time. We've got about 9 minutes left. So if you've got questions for Douglas, please send them in. I haven't, to be honest, I've not been looking at the comments so much. So I haven't seen if there's any questions that have already come in. I'm sure there has been a few that I've missed. But if you've got any questions, send them in now, and we will play this little banner and we'll ask the staple questions. So community questions. So whilst those questions pour in, Douglas, I'm going to ask you a couple of staple questions.
Okay.
The first one is, if you could take any character from fiction and make... I've just seen one of the first questions that's come in. It's pretty good. If you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, which character would you choose and why?
If I could take any character from fiction and what?
Make it your own. So take
own.
that character, put them into a story, or have them as a protagonist, or any of those things.
Wow, that's a great question. Wow, I hadn't thought about that. Peter Hartog has written a series, 2 books in the series so far, called The Guardians of Empire City. And he's got a character, and there's kind of similar to mine in that we have law enforcers in a kind of noirish cyberpunk fantasy kind of world. He's got a character named Doc, the Deacon. That's a character that I've been threatening to steal for a while now. He would fit right into my world. So that certainly is one. Recommend his books a lot. Bloodlines is one of the books, and Pieces of 8 is the other book. So I really recommend those books. If you like my books, you'll love those. Brilliant.
Yeah, great answer. The second question that we have, I'm only gonna ask 3 because we've got questions coming in.
Okay.
The second question that we have is, if you could change the ending, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be reserved on this, but if you could change the ending to any novel, which ending would you change and why?
Wow. Any novel. Wow. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer that question.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Yeah,
I was hoping you were going to pick some really popular novel like 50 Shades of Grey and just kill everyone or something.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. Maybe something will occur to me later, but I can't think of one right now.
Yeah, definitely. And the third and final question that we ask is, well, it's not the final question. We normally have a few more, but like I said, we've got some coming in. It's quite a morbid one, so I apologize for this, but you're on your deathbed and you're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
I think what I would be happy with is just the fact that I did it. I wrote that first novel and finished it, and then I wrote some more, and I had beginnings, middles, and endings to all of them. I think just the fact that I did it would currently and later would leave me completely satisfied.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good answer. I am going to ask you one more, even though I just said I'm not going to. But I am kind of intrigued. So, say you had to leave Southerland to somebody else, and somebody's watching this in the future that's picked up your work, and they are responsible for carrying on the story or going into the world and creating new stories that people want to read. What would your advice be to them if they're watching this in the future?
Gosh, the person I would probably leave it to would be Peter Hartog, or the sophomore, maybe. Although he writes in ancient Rome, we could have Sutherland go back to ancient Rome, but then it would be his character, his Felix the fox character. So, what would my advice be? Just do with him whatever you want. I've been trying to kill him for 7 books now, and he just won't die. So, have at him, and because he's pretty resilient, he'll probably fight back. Whatever you're intending to do, he'll probably fight back. So, try and keep him in line, and try to get him to quit drinking. He drinks way too much.
Like it. Brilliant. Put him on the straight and narrow. Right. So I'm going to go into the community question. So
and tell him to get out more. Tell him to get out more. He needs to meet more people.
Yeah, go out and see the world. Anya says, and this was the first question that came in, which is why are Ewoks evil?
Are Ewoks evil? The little teddy bear guys in the Star Wars movies? I'm going to have to say yes. They're one of the reasons I quit watching Star Wars. So yeah, definitely evil.
Wow.
Definitely evil little creatures. Yeah.
That bad.
Too many puppets. I enjoyed the first, I go back a way. So I remember when the first Star Wars movie came out. And it was like the next 12 times I went to the theater, that's the movie I saw. Loved it. And then I watched Empire Strikes Back and loved it even more. And then we got Ewoks and lots of puppets and lots of silliness. And, until Andor came along, I had no use for the rest of it. But the Andor series I thought was great. But most of the Star Wars series, I watched the first episode or two and then give up on them. So
yeah.
So Ewoks, I think Ewoks were the beginning of all that. So yeah, definitely evil.
See, I thought you were making a joke then when you said the first film I watched. I felt like when I watched the next 12 films, they were all the same. And I thought you were joking about the narrative.
No, they were all Star Wars.
It's similar. It's just the same film again.
I've seen this before. I think I know what happens next.
Yeah, definitely. Here's the next question. So this is from Malingo, my current arch enemy in the after show. But they say, what authors run books has finished through their death or their choice you wanted more of? I've heard of Pratchett. So that's a good question. Even
it
if
is a good
read
question.
it in the right way.
And again, as I said before, maybe it has something to do with attention span. I don't know. But I tend to give up on series before they're done. I tend, because the original idea that made the series so great, you can only stretch it so far. And after a while, it's like we're just repeating ourselves, or we've jumped the shark, or we're just stretching this idea beyond its breaking point. Now, I have not read Pratchett, so I'm one of those heathens, I guess. It's been recommended to me a lot. I think I read the first Pratchett book, and then I read Good Omens, which I thought was great. But I credit all that to Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, I mean, Good Omens is a strange one because as somebody who's read Pratchett and Gaiman, I can as soon as you pick that book up, you can see the different styles of writing. Like, I don't think they blend very well, even though they complement each other well. I think you can clearly see who's written each section, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And like I said, I read the first Pratchett book. I've been told that I gave up on him too soon. I've been told that repeatedly, and to the point where I probably believe it. And so maybe one of these days I'll go back. But it's one of those things where I got time. I'll do it later.
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Next question is from Linda, and it says, I are transported back to ancient Rome and must choose an Olympian god to defend you in a tournament. Battle to the death. Who do you pick and why? That's a great question.
I'm going to go out into the Mediterranean Sea and take Neptune, because it's Rome, right? So Neptune, because in the sea, nobody can stand up to him. So that would be a sure thing. So battle to the death, Neptune in the sea. That would do it.
Brilliant. Yeah, great answer. Neptune, all the way in the sea. Brilliant. So we've just gone past the hour mark, Douglas. So the final thing that we asked,
by just like that.
Yeah, it did. Time flies when you're having fun. Malingo, I'm not even reading that comment because just getting a bit. So the final question that we have is, where can people find your books? Where can people find information about you? And all of that good stuff.
Yeah, because I'm on Kindle Direct Publishing, the only place you can find my books is at Amazon. So go to Amazon there. I also I have audiobook versions of all of my books, narrated by the fabulous Duffy Weber, veteran voice actor. He's terrific. So you can go to audible.com if you're into the Audible books. And there have been a lot of people who have told me the book was but the narration, brilliant. So totally recommend Duffy Weber for your projects too, by the way. But otherwise, Amazon is the only place you can find it.
Brilliant. And what about you in general? Like, if people are really interested and they've watched this show and they want to know more about you, where can they find information about you?
I have a website, douglaslumsdenauthor.com. There's really not much on it. It's basically there just to show you what I've written. It does have a bio on there as well. I have a Substack newsletter called Under the Fedora. And I have a lot of blog posts there. So that would be a good place to go. It's you go to Substack and search for Under the Fedora, you can find it. I can't off the top of my head tell you what the address is, but so those would be the two best places.
Definitely. I'll make sure Agatha puts links in the description to this show to obviously all your books, your website.
I should note before we go, I got to note that The Blood Moon Feeds on My Dreams is available for pre-order at Amazon for 40% off. So
nice. And so we can pre-order it now, but when does it actually get released?
Oh, it gets released on August 1st.
Nice.
August 1st.
Yeah, so we can go and we can pre-order it. And I think as well tonight, if we, I'm going to ask you one more question, Douglas, just simply so we can do a little bit of a giveaway. I'm going to buy the first 3 of your books after the show, and I'm going to give them away to somebody who answers the question that you pose. So if you pose a question, if someone comments on this description after the show, I'm going to gift them the first 3 in the Southerland series. So, whatever question you want, you can pose, and they can, the people who put the answer, if it's more than obviously if there's loads of people that put the answer, then basically we'll put everyone's name into a hat or a fedora, and we'll pick it out, and then one person will win the first 3.
All right, question. Question has an obvious answer, but the question is, who's better looking, Chris Hooley or Douglas Lumsden? And that's my question.
That is a great question, and I think we all know the answer to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely. But yeah, if you have an answer to that question, when Agate puts the show together and he puts our show tweet out, he will say answers beneath, because I'll direct him to and tell him, well, I won't direct him. He runs the show, but I will say, look, we asked a question at the end. People put their answers below. And if you let us know in the comments of that, what the correct answer is, and we all know what the correct answer is there. And we will pick somebody from the comments and we will gift them the first 3 of the Southerland series. And you will, it's a fantastic series and I guarantee that you'll really enjoy it. So, if you want to be in with a chance of winning, just comment in that section when it goes live and we will gift you those books. So thank you very much, Douglas, for coming on the show. It's been
great.
Pleasure. And go and pre-order right now, because obviously we've got quite a way off until August. So if you can get enough pre-orders in, you can shoot straight to the top of the charts, which is exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. There we go.
So
it's been great. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. And we didn't see the cats. We didn't see either. Is that a cat?
Now they got shy on me for some reason. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, and you've got brilliant names. So you got Cinderella and Prince hide in there.
Cinderella and Prince. Cinderella is the white one. Prince is the black one. It's this is actually their sleeping time, so they're probably napping. But I am disappointed they didn't make an appearance.
We'll forgive them on this occasion. But that's goodbye from me and goodbye from Douglas. And please tune in next week when we've got another brilliant author on the show. I'm not sure who it is because I haven't looked that far ahead in the schedule, but we've definitely got somebody because we're booked up now until November.
If you ever want to bring me back, just let me know.
We definitely will. But yeah, thank you very much and see you next week, everyone. Goodbye.